just open up my notes. Okay, cool. So today we are going to be talking about Bruce Lindahl. And the main sources for the one today is some information from the Generation Y podcast and a lot from the Chicago Tribune and from the, I want to make sure I say it right, DuPage sheriff, that county's office. They did a lot of press releases, so a lot of information came from there. Okay, cool. So that's working. Okay, so in terms of Minecraft, I'm just gonna kill some zombies I have in a zombie spawner, and then if I can get to level 40, then we're just gonna go mining. I actually had a full diamond armor, and I was gonna put some netherite on it, and I went to go do that today, and then my diamond armor just disappeared. It was on an arm stand, and I don't know where it went. I don't know why it's still lagging the game. Okay, so let's go there, and then let's get into this one. So I actually had a completely different murder plan, and then I ran into this article. Then I can tell you what it's called later, but I completely changed what I was gonna do. So I did all of this last night. I was up until like 2 a.m. trying to find all this information because this is just so fascinating. So our story begins with 16-year-old Pamela Maurer. And this is in 1976. She was found raped and murdered by the side of the road. Someone was driving by and found her body just dumped in the side of the road. And after further examination, they did a rape test on her, and they didn't actually at first announce that that she was raped. They just said that her body was found, but the initial reports I don't think include that, which we'll read those later. But she was found near, so this is my little zombie spawner, or my zombie killer. Let me turn these guys down. So I have a campfire here because you just need one swipe to get everything, and then you're all set. And I don't really care right now about how quick it takes, whatever, but they fall into the campfire, and I have water pushing them from the spawner. And we did follow other tutorials on how to properly do this, quote unquote. So there's a spawner slab on top, slab on bottom, 4 in each direction, and then 5 down, so it's 9 by 9 by 9 by 9 by 9. And then right there, underneath the ladder, like on this block, they drop down into the fire. I did the one in the past where you rise them and you drop them, they take fall damage, that way it's only one hit, but that is just so much effort, and I'm still new to Minecraft, so this just seems a lot easier. Okay, so we're gonna kill some zombies while we read about Pamela. So this is in Illinois, near College Street and Maple Avenue in the small village of Lindahl, which is DuPage County in Illinois. The cause of death was ruled as strangulation, and a nearby rubber hose was found at the crime scene, and was believed to be what was used in the murder for strangulation. And this was on January 12th. She was visiting a friend at about 9 p.m. is when she decided to leave, and she went to a nearby McDonald's to buy something to drink when she was snatched off the street by her killer. Some articles say that she went to McDonald's and then went to another friend's house on her way home, and then was snatched between another friend's house and home. But the official records say that she was snatched near the McDonald's. So despite exhausted efforts, police were unable to identify the perp, and the case went cold. Now, police had noted that the killer tried to make it appear that she was hit by a car. During this time, there were other crimes going on in the area. I have to scroll my other monitor. Okay. And this was in the 1970s and 80s, so detectives relied on electric typewriters and telephones, and they didn't have the sophisticated computer systems and cell phones and all that stuff we have now. The national databases detailing and connecting unsolved homicides or unidentified remains didn't exist when all this was happening. Sorry, I'm lagging a lot. So this existed. And the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children was not created until 3 years after the last crime mentioned today. So other crimes in the area, right? So this was in 1976 was Pamela, and then in 1979, 3 years later, Annette Lazar had been walking to a friend's house in Aurora, which is neighboring to Lisle. A stranger pulled over in his car and asked if Lazar, who was 20 at the time, wanted to buy some marijuana. She agreed and followed him to a nearby house into the basement, where the man showed her his pet falcon, while Nights Out were Nights in White Satin by Moody Blues blared from the record player. Then he put a gun to her head and ordered her into the bedroom and sexually assaulted her. Annette Lazar then was trying to think of a game plan of what to do to get out. And she started complimenting the perp. She started complimenting him and saying, "Oh, I'll be your girlfriend. I'll come back anytime. Why don't I give you my name and number? And then that way you can call me and I can come the next time you want me to come here." And that was in her mind her way out. So she wrote her name and her number down on a piece of paper, and she lived to tell the tale. And then she went to the police, and they did a rape kit on her. And when they started questioning the person who assaulted her, he showed the police the piece of paper that she wrote on that had her name and number, and said, "Oh, but this is my girlfriend." And so the police were like, "Oh, it looks like you're his girlfriend." And then nothing came to that. And then a couple months later, in 1979, a 16-year-old named Deborah McCall went missing and was last seen leaving school, and she was never heard again. They never found her body. There's absolutely no closure to these cases. So these are what's happening in the area besides just Pamela Maurer. Now, what's funny enough is this case was cold for 44 years, right? They only had those separate things happening, and all three of them was just, that's how they were. They were left like that. Now, in 1993, Pamela Maurer's case was reopened, because then it was marked closed, and they reopened in 1993. And then in 2001, evidence from Maurer's body allowed investigators to develop a DNA profile of her killer, but there was no hits. They created the profile, but they didn't have anyone in their database that had those hits, so it still remained solved until 2020. The one good thing to come out of 2020 happened in January. A lot of the grunt work was done in 2019, but it was announced in January. So in January 2020, 44 years after the murder of Pamela Maurer, authorities announced they've confirmed a DNA match to Maurer's killer, who's identified as Bruce Lindahl through investigative genealogy. And this was the first time in Illinois that a killer was caught through investigative genealogy. Now, spoiler alert, Bruce is dead. He's been dead a while. More about that later. But Bruce's body was exhumed in November 2019, so about a year ago. They exhumed his body, and his DNA was tested against the sample found and preserved from Pamela's body 44 years ago, and it was a match. When that case reopened and the article of Bruce Lindahl was released, Annette Lazar came forward to say, "Told you so," basically. Bruce Lindahl was the one who kidnapped her, and all those years ago, and raped her, and she went to the police, and they have the kit, and they have the proof that he was there, but he was a monster, she said. And she started talking to the press, saying, "I tried going to the police about him, and a lot of things could have been prevented." Now, it was after Pamela Maurer's case, but it could have prevented more things. "I tried to tell him that he was a monster, and nobody wanted to listen," she told the Chicago Tribune. "I told Bruce that I was going to call the police, and Bruce said, 'Go ahead. No one would believe you because I live with a cop.'" That's what Bruce told her. And it turns out that he did live with a cop, and when that cop moved, the cop actually gave his house to Bruce, where they believe more killings could have happened. So, authorities also believe that he was behind the disappearance of Deborah McCall. Now, we'll go over why and all that stuff later, but that is how they're able to catch him. Now, you might be thinking, how did he go under the radar for so long? Like, he has to be the sneakiest mother effer around to get away with that. Just dump someone, and he must be so sneaky. No, he was not. He was an idiot. He was connected to crimes that were already happening. They already knew that there was something wrong with him. He was known to various police departments in Lisle and just in DuPage County in general as a loser who had been arrested many times, but he had no felony convictions on his record. But he was known in the area by the police departments, even though he lived with a cop. And not only that, but on October 7th in 1980, so this is a year after Annette, who survives incident, and 4 years after Pamela, kidnapped a woman named Deborah Collinger from the Northgate Shopping Center. He kept her in his apartment against her will, where he sexually assaulted her and made her pose for naked photos. He encouraged her to look as if she was there voluntarily, telling her to act like she was enjoying herself. When Lindahl fell asleep, Collinger managed to escape and went to a neighbor's house. And she was naked and she was scared. And the neighbor gave her clothes and helped her with contacting the police, which is why we have all this information. She survived and told the police all this. Oh wait, we have a little guy. A little guy. Boop. Boop. I hate these guys. The sword has looting and sweeping edge. So we have all this. Let me show you how much stuff. This actually gets a good amount of rotten flesh. Let me bring this up, and then we'll see how much I get while I say the remainder of this. Just with rotten flesh. I don't really care about a potato. Does anyone else struggle going down ladders? That's just a personal problem. Boop. Okay, we're back. So, She escaped and he was falling asleep, went to a neighbor's house. She was naked. She was scared. The neighbor gave her clothes, helped contact the police, and Lindahl was charged in Kane County with deviated sexual conduct, rape, and aggravated kidnapping. 2 weeks before Deborah was going to testify against him in court, she went missing. Deborah went missing 2 weeks before she was going to testify. Sidebar, at this time, there was a roommate of Bruce's who lived in the house that the police officer gave him. And the roommate was an alcoholic at the time when he was going through recovery. But Bruce did mention to his roommate, there's this girl who has these charges against me, and if she doesn't show up to court, then everything gets dropped. And he told the roommate that, but the roommate was like in and out of the hospital dealing with his alcohol addiction. So they didn't really get any of this information until it was too late. And Bruce actually offered his roommate an incentive to kill her, which we'll talk about soon. But she went missing. She went missing, nobody could find her. And so the case was dropped. And then Bruce took it out on the neighbor. He would walk his dog, and it would be like raining out, pitch black. And the neighbor did an interview, so that's where this information came from. But anyway, and he would just stand in the corner in the dark, peering into the neighbor's window. And this was the neighbor that helped Deborah and called the police. And when the neighbor's children would play in the front lawn, Bruce would like slowly drive in his car and stare at her. And she felt like it was like he was taunting her or threatening her. And ever since Deborah went missing, the neighbor was in constant communication with police departments and calling them almost every day because Bruce was doing something that she felt threatened by. Okay, so we had a little guy. Now, 2 years later, Deborah's body was found in a shallow grave on a farm. This farmer owned massive property, and one day he was just walking by one area and noticed that it was a little bit more shallow than the rest. And he started digging to figure out why is there this sudden kind of dip in my land. And as he started digging, he found a very shallow grave with body parts in it, with remains. And it turned out to be Deborah's body. Now, unfortunately, they couldn't get any DNA evidence off of Deborah's body because it wasn't preserved. It was out there for 2 years and it lost anything they could have used that was on it. And the police actually believe now that Bruce definitely was involved in the murder. If he didn't commit it himself, then he must have ordered a hit on her. Because then, 2 years after, the guy that he lived with came to police and mentioned, yeah, when I lived with him, he mentioned that if she went missing, the case would be dropped. But he also offered me $2,000, a handgun, whiskey, and pills to get rid of Deborah. But this was all after Deborah's death. So then, a year after Bruce Lindahl kidnapped Deborah Collinger. So this is a year after, but still her body is unfound. They haven't found her body yet. He picked up this teenager. His last name is Huber. I don't have his first name in here, and I don't feel like switching tabs because my internet's being poopy. But they were going bowling. They went to hang out to this guy's house, and Bruce ended up attacking this 18-year-old. He was in high school. He stabbed him almost 30 times. I think it was 28 times. But while he was stabbing Huber, he accidentally slashed his own femoral artery with the 6-inch blade. And he ended up bleeding to death next to the teenager he just killed. So both those bodies were found. And police believe that he planned to murder the young man to get to his girlfriend, who's sleeping in another room. And then he ended up bleeding to death from his injuries. So when they found Collinger's body a year later, which is why they think there's a hit, because either he killed her right away and the body wasn't found for 2 years. That information I haven't been able to clarify. Like, was she killed right away and they couldn't find the body for 2 years or whatever. But it was long enough where everything was damaged. So he was dead by the time that they found her body. Now that they found all this with Pamela, and then they look into the fact that he was already tied to one definite murder because he was dead next to the person that he just murdered, and he had that, but he was dead, so they couldn't convict him of anything. And they don't know how involved he was, but he was involved with Deborah Collinders. And now they tied him to Pamela Maurer. So that's 3. So now they're thinking, we now have a serial killer on our hands. Now again, this is in January 2020. This is when they announced it. I think it was January 13th, 2020, they announced this. So, they're thinking, there must be more cases that he could be connected to. Now they think that number's up to 12, but in 1981, after he died, his house was searched by police, who uncovered a stash of photographs of nude women, just like what Deborah experienced. Exactly the same poses, and amongst those photos was the photo of a missing student who vanished without trace in 1979, who was McCall. What was her first name? Deborah McCall. So they found photos of Deborah McCall in his stash of photos, which is why they think he's now connected to that murder. Again, this was all after his death. Some of the women looked as though they were voluntarily posing, possibly at the forced direction of him, while others are just completely scared stiff. So now it's up to investigators to try to see how many of those are victims and try to identify the women in those photos. Because again, those were taken in 1981, but now they're trying to match his DNA with everything that was close. So Bruce Lindahl may have murdered a dozen women throughout the 70s and early 80s and somehow managed to evade the law while doing so. He did, however, have a close call with the police. So not only in the 1980s, he died next to a body that he killed, so can't really do much there, but he had this charge of rape and assault against him. So that was known. But not only that, while he was driving back to his apartment, he was pulled over by the police during a routine traffic stop. And in his car, there was a bloodied female in the back seat. So he's driving, find a woman who's bloodied up in the back seat, and when they asked Lindahl what happened, he claimed that he was driving the woman, who appeared to have a head injury, to the nearest hospital, despite driving in the complete opposite direction of where the hospital was. Now, the police thought, oh, maybe he's doing a good deed, and they actually gave him an award for being a Samaritan for driving her to the hospital. Now, when everything with Deborah came to light, they took that award away. But they gave him an award for being a good citizen. So police called an ambulance for the injured female, who told hospital staff that she had no recollection of what happened, but did remember being at a party with Bruce Lindahl and taking a sip of his drink. Today, police believe that he was looking either for a dumping ground for the body, or he was trying to take her to his apartment where he was living, because at that time he moved out of the house into his own apartment to whatever. Now, Lindahl didn't have that many friends. He relocated several times over the years, including stints in both Lisle and Aurora. And he was considered decent looking and was said to have a silver tongue that enabled him to persuade people to do what he wanted. And it kind of seemed like wherever he went, women would go missing, and those cases would dwindle as soon as he moved to another town. Lindahl's ex-girlfriends described how he would ask them to simulate knife attacks on him so he could show them his defense skills. However, police believe the real reason may be way more sinister, and that Lindahl possibly wanted to kill a woman but needed to look like it was an act of self-defense. So he would ask his girlfriends to do these role-playing things, and I don't think any of them did, so now they're thinking maybe he did that to show his self-defense. The Daily Beast published an exclusive article featuring the story of Lindahl's living victim, referred to as Fran to protect her identity, where she recalls the killer constantly hosting parties at his apartment where he would ply young female guests with free alcohol. She goes on to say that he eventually gained her mother's trust and seemed like an upstanding person. Fran told a media outlet that the suspected serial killer drugged her scotch at one of their regular drinking sessions and that she lost all control of her body. Once immobilized, she said her attacker took pictures of her naked, just like he did with his other victims, and sexually assaulted her. The article suggests that he groomed and sexually exploited the teen while trying to maintain a normal outwardly appearance. Fran eventually escaped Lindahl when she began working the night shift at a new job. But that didn't stop him from following her and attempting to further exploit the teen. She believes that she narrowly avoided being murdered by him. Now, since the story has been in the news in 2020, people who knew Bruce are coming forward to say what he was like in high school. And in these videos of people coming forward, they just kept saying things like, he was so strange. He was definitely an oddball. So it's like one or the other. It's like either people are super convinced and he can have him do whatever he wants, or people are creeped out by him. Like, there is no middle ground. And someone even said, like, there were warning signs of this in high school. And this brother and sister sat down, Linda and Terry, and Linda was saying, and if you search Bruce Lindahl into YouTube, you'll see all these videos about him, including these interviews. And so Linda went to high school with Bruce, and she said he gave us all the creeps. That was kind of the vibe. Look how much we got just from telling the story so far. So he gave them all the creeps. And there's actually one time, Linda is telling this story, where she was at a bowling alley, and she had her own car, and she was leaving, and Bruce was there, and insisted on driving her home. And she was like, no, I have my own car. I can drive myself home. And he just was not taking no for an answer. And he even tried damaging the wiring in Linda's car and hoping that the car would break down. So she was forced to take Bruce's offer and go home. Are you off the Wi-Fi? Are you off the Wi-Fi? Okay. Just because it's being slow. So anyway, so he messed with the wiring and hoping to prevent her from going home. But, plot twist, her car still worked. So she was able to drive home. And even when her car started, Linda was saying how Bruce said, what? That was not supposed to happen. Your car isn't supposed to start. So he even admitting that he tried to break her car. And during this interview, Linda is sitting next to, I think it's her brother, Terry. And Terry is recalling how a year after the situation that Linda had, that incident, he recalls to reporters about how he saw Bruce trying to force a woman into his car. They're still in high school. The girl was yelling for help when Terry intercepted and got her away from Bruce. And so he saved this girl. And Bruce got very upset that Terry interacted. And at a local fast food place, Terry's brother was there, and Bruce actually beat him up because he was retaliating for his brother stepping in and trying to intercept with one of his victims. And Terry's brother ended up needing 7 stitches. So this is while they were in high school. Now, police are working to identify the women who are in the collection of the photographs, and other possible victims, and neighboring counties are working through cold cases to see if he could be linked to any of those, because now they have this profile of him. Now, how did they do it? All this happened in the 70s, late 70s, and early 80s, but it wasn't until this year that they were able to make that connection, and now everything is coming together. You know, everything was scattered. They didn't know anything. And then this investigative genealogy that they did, this format, is bringing all these stories together and helping paint the bigger picture of what happened during those years. So how did they do it? And all this info is from the DuPage County Sheriff's press release on January 13th, which is on YouTube. So in 1976, the Lisle and Woodbridge Police Department were extremely thorough. Pam's killer would never have been identified if they weren't as thorough with collecting evidence as they were. So, like I said, in 2001, it was reopened in 1993, but in 2001, Pam's case, they had biologic evidence from her body, and it was analyzed, and the DuPage County Sheriff's Crime Laboratory and they took her evidence and they made a DNA profile of her suspected killer. Now, like I said, there were no matches, but the profile was entered to the combined DNA index system, which is known as the CODA system, but there were no hits generated. So in 2019, what's that music? In 2019, additional and advanced DNA testing and analysis was conducted on the forensic evidence by Paraban Nanolabs at the request of the Lisle Police Department and the DuPage County State Sheriff's Office. So in early 2000, they created the profile, and then in 2019 they were going through some old cases and requested that this be done. So first, DNA phenotype was used, which is the process of predicting the physical appearance and ancestry from unidentified DNA evidence. So I looked this up a little bit, and it's basically predicting what someone's going to look like based on the DNA you gather. And it can be used to generate leads where there are no suspects or database hits, or it can narrow suspect lists and to help solve human remains cases. Like if you can get a partial DNA of a body, you can take the DNA and say what the person looked like to identify a missing person, or you can use it to say like, hey, this is what the person looks like, so we can probably eliminate anyone with blonde hair, blah, 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 blah. So that's what that was. That was the first thing they did. And what this did is this resulted in the creation of a snapshot prediction for traits such as eye color, hair color, skin color, face shape, and a composition which provides an approximation of the appearance of the unknown subject. So that's what came from DNA phenotype. So next, genetic genealogy analysis was conducted using a public genetic genealogy database and traditional genealogy research to build a family tree to identify potential new leads in the case. So genetic genealogy is a combination of genetic analysis with traditional historical and genealogical research to study family history. For forensic investigations, it can be used to identify remains by tying the DNA to a family with a missing person or to point the likely identifier of the perp. Oh, we got a low nug. Goodbye. Sorry, every time I do this because I have to scroll on my page. Okay, so detectives from the Lindahl Police Department then used traditional investigative methods to confirm the genealogical information and identified the person of interest, who is Bruce Lindahl, who is deceased. So they used all the information that they gathered, creating the profile, and then used traditional methods. Once they had what he looked like and the families he could be tied to, that's how they came to Bruce. In the fall of 2019, so a year ago, with the cooperation of DuPage County Coroner Richard Jorgensen and his office, blah, 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 a lot of people worked together, and they got a court order to exhume Bruce Lindahl's body. So they had this information, they had a DNA profile, they got the face of it, and based off all that, they're like, hey, this is probably Bruce, but we need DNA from his body to put it into the system and see if it's a match. So they were very successful, and they were successful in extracting and profiled DNA from the remains of Bruce, which confirmed that the DNA evidence recovered from Pam's body was consistent with Bruce Lindahl's DNA profile. So they created this profile of who her perp could be, and then they exhumed his body, and it was a match. And they said that the case of it being random, like essentially them being wrong, but it being a random person, that it was like 1 in like 1 quadrillion that this would be essentially be wrong. So now what they're doing is they're using his profile that they now have into the database, because he wasn't in there, which is why they got no hits off of her in 2003, 2001. So now he's in there. So now they're trying to use the profile in other unsolved cases during that time to see if the break in this case can lead to other cases being solved as well. Now, like I said, ever since they started doing this, they notice the pattern of abductions. So when he lived in the house, either there'd be reports of abductions in the area, they would find dead bodies in the area, or there would be people coming forward with sexual assaults in the area. Then he moved. Those died down, basically went away when he moved. Then they started happening in Aurora. So they happened in Lisle, then they happened in Aurora when he moved. That followed him. And so that's where they get the number 12 from. Now the problem with some of the cases that they're going through is they don't have as much evidence as they did with Pamela's case. So now I want to show you pictures of Lindahl. Go here. Okay, I want to bring it here. So what we're gonna see is we are going to look at let me get this up. This is let me size this down for you real quick. Okay, doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so this right here, this top right, my mouse showing? This is the top right is the profile that they came up with based on what they got off of Pamela's body. The top right, that's what they thought that her perp looked like. And on the left is Bruce's photo from high school. And then underneath it are two more photos of him. So they said it's pretty spot on between these two photos. So let's turn this off. Let's pop this up. Okay, so now let's look at. These are the original articles from when all this happened in the 70s. No, I didn't mean to turn myself off. Whoops. Okay. Why is it doing that? Why isn't it was working for me earlier? Okay, here we go. Okay, so suburb 16 strangled, find by Long Isle Road. Pamela A. Maurer, this is on the right hand side. Pamela A. Maurer of Woodbridge, a high school junior, was found strangled Tuesday alongside College Road, about 1.5 miles south of Maple Avenue in West Suburban Lisle. Lisle Police Chief M.J. Worth said the murder weapon may have been a length of rubber hose, which was found near the girl's fully clothed body. The hose is being tested in the police laboratory. Pam, who lived, was reported missing to the police at 11 p.m. and she left her friend's house at, I think, like 9:45 when she failed to return home from the house of a girlfriend about 2 blocks away from her home. The body was discovered at 7:27 a.m. by Thomas Parman, a highway commissioner. He saw a purse along the west side of the road, thought someone might have been hit by a car, which, remember, that's what he wanted them to think. And then he made a U-turn on the highway and returned to the scene. The body was laying outside of a guardrail, which protects motorcyclists from driving off the highway, where it makes a slight turn. There are bruises on the girl's neck indicating that she had been strangled. Because the girl was wearing a hooded coat, the bruises did not completely encircle the neck. The girl's clothing was not disarranged, and the chief said, here goes, indicated that she had not been sexually molested, even though she was. So in the papers, they said that she wasn't and that she was fully clothed, but they were keeping that out of the newspaper. And there's no sense. No one's addressing why they lied. But they're completely not right, because they did further testing. They did a rape kit and it showed that she was. But in the paper, they said, it doesn't look like it. Page 15. Oh boy. So, like, who knows why they were keeping that? It could... Anyway, so that's the beginning of that news article. And then, here's this one. Here's another one. Investigators were able to reconstruct Pamela's body Monday night. Activity was 9:45 p.m. She was at home with a friend, Dale Dunham, 18. They played cards and she left about 8:30 for her home. Her brothers and sisters left their school classes and went home upon learning that Pamela's body was found. Short savings. So yeah, anyway, so when they reported it, they just completely misrepresented what had actually happened to her in the newspaper, which is just completely absurd. Chosen for me. How nice. So yeah, a lot of information came from the Chicago Tribune, and they're still trying to figure out what happened. Now there's a lot of information and even more information coming forward. I was watching the YouTube video of the press release from the sheriff department's office, and someone commented saying that now this could be you don't know what's true or not, right? But someone commented on it saying that there's another girl who was the girlfriend of Bruce Lindahl who was murdered, and they said her name was Sue Vale, but I tried looking that up and I couldn't verify any of that information. So it was spelled Zoo, yeah, so Vele. I just copy and pasted from the YouTube comment, and I couldn't find anything that linked them together. Like dead, was considered Sioux, and then Illinois, maybe. So I could not find anything that would confirm that comment. Maybe she meant, what's this? No, 69 years old. No, that's not it. So there's nothing I could find to confirm that. So that was today's murder in Minecraft. It's really wild how someone could stay under their radar and just do everything. And the thing is, they don't even know how many people he could have. It could be 12, but it could even be more than 12. Like, you really don't know how many victims he had, because there are so many reports of rape or sexual assault or whatever. So it's not even just murders. They think that he could have killed as many 12 people, but he could have had way more than that who were victims. And now that one, Annette is very vocal in sharing her story, and a lot of YouTube videos that come out, they're talking about it. She's very open about telling her story. One, there has to be some relief knowing that he can't retaliate anymore. He was an idiot, and he stabbed himself while he was trying to kill someone. And so there has to be some sort of relief that you can come forward a little bit and talk about, knowing that no one can he can't bother you anymore physically. Absolutely can emotionally. Like, that's still something that everyone would have to suffer to this day, but there has to be some sort of relief knowing that you can come out and you can talk about what happened. And there won't be the retaliation, because he was known to retaliate. He even told her, like, no one's gonna believe you. And I'm kind of interested. I was interested to find, but I couldn't, like, if he tried retaliating against her. But yeah, he just went under the radar for so freaking long. Who knows, maybe they'll be able to connect him to more cases. Already looks like all the time people are coming forward saying their piece of information that they got from their interactions with him. And that's like the tough thing though in high school is you might get like a bad vibe or something from someone, or someone might seem off, but like what do you do with that information? You know, people tried going to the police and saying everything, but he lives with the cops, so what are you going to do in those situations? Alright. So I want to get 40 levels, and then I have to go get some diamond armor, but that... Oh, what did I just do? That's a story of Bruce frickin' Lindahl, and I'm sure you can put like a Google alert on his name, and I'm sure that there will be more things to come, even if it's just people who've interacted with him coming forward and they're writing a story about it, or if in January 2021 they do like any information they found in the last year since they had that press conference connecting the dots with everything. This is definitely something they'll have more information to come, and the police are still asking for information about Deborah Collender, and their information is actually here. Let's look up their information. This one? Yeah. I want to Oh, duh, contact us. Let's go to contact us. Alright. Just on their website, but... Here it is. 630-407-6500. So they're actively still looking for information on... Oh wait, you probably can't see that. Oh no, you can, because my face. They're still looking for information on Deborah McCall, or on Deborah Collender, because it was 2 years from the time that she went missing and they found her body. So they're still looking for information on that, because they're still trying to see what else he was involved in. So yeah, that was this week for Murder in Minecraft. Now, I was thinking about doing, oh my god, he was never found. Oh my god. I just watched a Netflix documentary about him last week. But this very high profile serial killer. Oh my god, it's gonna bother me. But anyway, think about doing that next week, but it might be too big of a case for me to do Now, Jesse, what was that movie that we watched?
What?
That movie that we watched? What serial killer was that about?
The Zodiac?
Oh, yeah, the Zodiac Killer. Oh, my God, I hate myself. So that might be next week. But anyway, that's going to conclude Murder in Minecraft for today. And maybe we'll be doing the Zodiac Killer next week. Or we might be doing some of these smaller scale based on reputation serial killers, just as I figure out everything with streaming, because it was still choppy today. But anyway, thank you, and we'll see you next week. And on Wednesday we might be doing stupidest crimes of all time or stupidest criminals of all time, because there are some good ones, like people who straight out themselves on Facebook and like just want to brag about what they got away with. So until then, adios.